All right. Hello, everybody. Joanna here, and welcome to Why Read episode 11 with my lovely guests, Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads and Leslie from The Nerdy Narrative. So, how are you two doing today? How's it going,
Good.
Andrew?
It's going well. It's been rainy for the past 5 days here in Indiana, so it's just gloomy, overcast, and there's puddles of water everywhere. So other than that, I'm fine.
Yeah, it
I
was
can.
raining so hard and thundering so hard here earlier this morning, and I was in another discussion. And so I think the thunder got recorded into that one, and now the sun is full on out and it's super bright here.
Well, I
How
can
about you,
bottle y'all
Leslie?
up. I can bottle y'all both up some sunshine and send your way. We have plenty. It is hot as blazes out here.
Oh,
Please, please,
wow.
please.
I bet. And that's in Florida, right? In near Orlando?
Oh yeah, I'm in Disney's backyard.
Disney's backyard. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and here we have a few people in the chat
Theo.
here.
Yo,
Theo, yay. And we have Philip stopping by, which is so nice of you, Philip, because
Oh,
we know
hi
you.
Philip.
Philip has 4 shows today, so
My
yes,
goodness.
he's a busy author and booktuber, that's for sure.
for
And hi,
shows.
Claudia. All right, so in this show this is called the Why Read Show because I love to ask my guests who are clearly readers and reviewers. I love to ask them why they read, and so this is not so much a origin story of like why you started reading or why you got into reading, but more like with everything competing for your attention right now, there are so many things that we could be spending our time on. Why would you choose to pick up a book? And so I'm going to start with Leslie. So, Leslie,
Oh
why
gosh.
read?
It's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I've never been without 1 to 2 books. When I was younger, before we had all this great technology readily available on your phone or a tiny Kindle, I was the girl that I bought a purse based on how many books I could fit inside. So it's just been a part of my life forever. I would prefer to read over everything else because I don't have the imagination to create my own world to get lost in. So all of these authors who create these beautiful worlds, these characters that feel like real people to me, it just astounds me. But I do have enough imagination to visualize it. I'm very lucky
Mhm.
that I'm a visual reader. They play out like movies in my mind as long as they're written well enough. And sometimes if I just can't make that connection with the printed word, the audiobook narrator can bridge that gap for me and take me to that place. And I just I'm a homebody. It's hard to get me out of the house. I don't like to travel. I have no big dreams of traveling. I would like to I'm an armchair traveler. I like to sit in my comfy chair with my dogs, a cup of coffee, and let an author take me to a new place or world.
Oh, that's beautifully said. I also am somebody who loves to visualize what I read. And I did a video a while back. Do you visualize what you read? And I was
Mm-hmm.
completely blown away how many people do not visualize what they read.
I
Um,
know.
But you could still love books, clearly,
Right.
because many of those people are readers, and
Mm-hmm.
so and they love a lot of the same books I do, so I
Some
think
of
they're
my favorite reviewers are not visual readers, and I
yeah,
love that. Like one of my favorites is Angela from Literature Science Alliance.
yeah.
She's not a visual reader. I get more value out of her reviews because I get distracted by what I can picture. She just really hones in on some of the elements that I feel because that sense of visual reading isn't taking up some space, her other senses step in and hone in on
Mhm.
different things. So I get a lot of value out of non-visual reader reviews. So I'm glad that even though they're not all visual readers, they still love to read and talk about books.
Yeah, it's really strange the way that works because, like, 2 people that
Mm-hmm.
come to my mind that I feel like my taste is very similar to is Evie from She Was Only Evie and Jimmy from the Fantasy Network. I feel like my
Mm-hmm.
taste in books is pretty closely aligned to those 2, even though their tastes are very different, but they both claim they are not people who visualize what they read, but they attend to other
Mm-hmm.
things, and I think that's just amazing about the reading experience. But what about you, Andrew? Why do you read? You're a parent, I'm sure you have other hobbies as well. I don't know, but tell us with everything competing for your attention right now, what inspires you to pick up a book? Are you inspired to pick up a book?
So I'm kind of mad you asked Leslie to go first because she pretty much said everything I was gonna say. For me, it's basically a way of life. Like reading was a reward and a punishment growing up. Like the best time of year. Like I see people talking about the Scholastic Book Fair. It was the best time of year for me as a kid because I could just during school run and go grab books with
Mhm.
money that my parents had given me. Like reading it's who I am. So like I do have other hobbies. I used to make beer. I used to play a lot of video games. I don't really do either of those anymore. I'm getting back into gaming, but I've got two small kids. So there's just something rewarding about discovering a fantastical world and being taken on an adventure. I'm always like reaching for a next possible 5-star read. I want something inventive. I want something creative. I want something I can identify with. I want something that is really going to strike me right where I live. So, I mean, for me, it's a way of life. I've always read ever since I learned to read. I never stopped I was that guy in high school. Like I was the guy who, if you opened up my book bag, I had 4 or 5 books locked, loaded, ready to go. So it's just kind of who I am.
That's so interesting. It just gets embedded into our identities. Yeah, Rogue 6 about how do people not visualize what they read? It's interesting. I think that, one thing that you can say across the board, whether you're somebody who visualizes what you read or not, is the emotional experience that reading can bring. And I don't think you have to be able to visualize content in order to feel the emotional experience characters are going through, for example, or what's happening in a story. So I think that that's part of how I'd answer that question.
It's weird. I'm a weird mix of the two. So I
Mhm.
visualize sometimes, and then other times I don't. And it just really depends on what's going on in the book. Like if it's just descriptive text, I just switch that off and
Yeah.
let that fly. And then when it comes to an action scene, I just turn it back on. So I'm
I
a
can
little
kind
bit
of
of
do
column
that
A.
too. Yeah. I
So
can kind of do that too.
I'm not constantly visualizing, but like at times, like I can appreciate a description that's on the page without having to visualize it.
Hmm.
See, I'm visualizing everything. The only time that doesn't work for me is if my brain's too busy and it's trying to think about too many things other than what I'm trying to read. And then I'm like, you know what, brain, screw you, throw in the headphones, and that's when I'll immersion read to get trapped inside the story, and then I don't have to worry about what my brain's trying to do.
Immersion
Hmm.
reading is the great hack
Oh
of
man.
just like I either do white noise, brown noise, or immersion reading when I'm immersion reading. I don't know where I was going with that
Yeah.
sentence. It
Yeah, I
just
do white noise or bandit snoring. If he's
man,
snoring, he takes care of.
well, I need something to block out the constant child screeching or the daddy, look what I have. And it's like, well, what do you have? I don't know. And it's just like, well, I don't either.
Yeah. Goodness. And so how is it with your families, with both of you? Because I know, Leslie, you don't have kids, right? Like me?
No, but y'all, my husband has become a reader.
Oh,
He
I'm jealous.
he I finally I can't remember what happened exactly. Actually, yes, I can. He had to do a leadership thing at work, and part of that was reading books. And the first book they gave him was David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. And Chris doesn't like to sit down and read. He likes to be able to go and do stuff. So he got the audiobook and he loved it. And they did a podcast after every chapter. And then I just kept encouraging him. And so I got him to try. Well, he decided he wanted to start the Star Wars books.
Which one?
We didn't enjoy the High Republic, but I was like, all right, look, I've heard the first Thrawn trilogy is
Hmm.
magic. He has flown through, like, he is begging me, put all of the, just move your TBR over and read these books. And I'm like, babe, I have a schedule. So it's a
They're
blessing
really
and a
good, Leslie.
curse. I love that
The,
he's reading and enjoying it and excited to talk to me about it and wants me to read them with him. But it's a curse because I'm like, you should have, like, we should have planned this better, sweetheart. Like, I've got to read my books. He's like, I
Wow.
don't care.
I see
So
I've confused people with brown noise.
But
Evie's right.
yeah, but the
Oh.
deal is
That's
we
funny.
work it out well because I usually on certain nights he plays video games with his buddies online, and I just curl up in my chair and read. And then we just kind of have this schedule where we have like on the weekend, like Friday night through Sunday is Leslie and Chris time. We're all about each other. We're going out and doing stuff. And except for the last Saturday of the month, I usually have a couple live shows. And so he's like doing other stuff. But we just kind of have this routine where we have our alone time where we do our things that we like to do without the other. And then, but the weekend, buddy, we're just all about each other. And then we get tired of each other by Sunday night. And it's like, all right, Monday, I'm going to go read after work. You go do whatever.
So it's your way to kind of, add some space into the marriage, which is healthy.
My family is completely different. My kids have zero bounds currently at this age, but my wife is the exact opposite of me. We are quite literally the definition of opposites attract. I'm loud, boisterous. She's quiet, reserved. She'll give you a glare if you start making too much noise. I'm very bookish. She's a hockey player. So like she collects hockey jerseys. She customizes hockey jerseys. Like that's what she does when she wants her like alone time. She's like, hey, I'm going to go do some sewing on my hockey jerseys, do whatever you want with the kids. And then I'm like, hey, I've been dealing with these kids. I need to go read a little bit. So then we just swap out.
Sounds like you're a good team.
Yeah, it works. It works.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't think my wife has read a book 7 years.
Oh my goodness.
Meanwhile, in the last 7 years, I've probably read close to 500-600 books.
Yeah. Wow.
So we're just the exact opposite.
And they say though that I've heard before that having a different personality type than your spouse is good for parenting, apparently. That's what I've heard.
Apparently.
I can see that.
Yeah.
It would teach them how to interact socially with the different personalities, I would think.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't have kids, so I don't know. I'm just talking out my tail.
No, I think I think that's part of it. Yeah, I really do. It's interesting.
My
So
daughter's interested in books, but it's more of I want that, but I don't know what to do with it. So like she'll bring me over a kid book and she'll be like, read it to me. And so I'll start reading it to her and she's like, no, I can do it. And I'm like, well, you can't read, you can't do it. And then she'll just kind of babble as she flips the pages.
That's funny.
It's cute.
That's funny. Oh. So I'm curious though, because I'm getting a lot of comments here. One on visual reading, which is always a fascinating topic, but also about people saying that they wish they could read as much as you two, which
I am a queen of time management. I've always been that person. I think I got it from my dad. He was military, retired general. I always, whenever I get into something like start a new job, as soon as I've got it learned and down pat, the first thing I do is step back and say, how can I make this more efficient? And I kind of do that with reading because now I have a YouTube channel and I take notes and I make videos about it. And I want to read as much as possible still. Sometimes it's like hard to sit down and film because I've got a book I want to finish. So I have to be really efficient with it. But I get up and I read a short story with my first cup of coffee. Like if I don't get up and read first thing in the morning, I am not going to have a good day. And it just kind of, I don't know, it helps me start the day off right. When I walk my dogs, I'm listening to my audiobook. Washing dishes, cooking meals, audiobook. Cleaning house, my house has never been so clean. I love to clean because I can listen to my book. But then, just sitting down and reading is my favorite. Physical reading is my favorite. That tactile, just being able to touch the page. Because sometimes I'll tell you, I'll reread a chapter. If I've read a beautiful chapter, I'll reread it a couple of times. An example, Andrew, I know that you've read is Ungodly by Braden Riddick. There were passages, paragraphs, scenes, chapters. I would just go back and reread. And just being able to touch that, it just, I don't know, but I love to read. I'm always reading. I'll listen to my audio.
I always say, Yeah, I always say nobody loves reading or books more than Leslie.
I
Nobody. I am thoroughly
it's
convinced of that. Except
and I
maybe
I mean,
read.
I think Andrew does give Leslie some good competition, but I
Yeah,
still don't think anybody loves Leslie loves books more than Leslie because
all
no,
um
books,
Leslie's got that crown.
I
all
mean
books, genres. I love it.
there was that one vlog that Leslie did that you did, Leslie, where you said, or there was some video where you where you said that you ran away at Disneyland so that you could read, so you could
Yeah.
hide and read at Disneyland
Mhm.
or Disney World. Sorry,
I
Orlando.
mean, we go to Disney often. We go to Universal often. I take my Kindle. I will stand in line for food or a ride. I'm reading my Kindle, and
Hmm.
the many times that I hear people around me going, "Wow, that's a great idea. I should do that." It's just, otherwise I'll just be standing there.
That's
I
impressive
mean,
though, because I last year when I went to Orlando for ICFA, my husband and I went to Epcot, and the lines were so ridiculously long because I think it was like spring break time
yes,
around then.
it's the
And
worst.
so I pulled out my phone and I had my The God Is Not William by Stephen Erickson on my phone, the ebook,
Mhm,
and I
mhm,
read the whole day just while in
mhm.
line. I just read and I was able
And
to do it. I was
it makes
surprised, but my
well,
eyes were
the
so
crowds are kinda like
fatigued.
white noise. It
Yeah,
kind of just
yeah,
blends in,
yeah.
but it makes the time go by fast. It keeps my blood pressure down from going, "Oh my god, we've been in line for 3 hours." I don't care because I'm reading my book. Like, I'm happier than a pig in a blanket waiting, standing in line, doing whatever as long as I have my book. If I don't have something to read, if I have made a grave error and I don't have a device I can read on, that's a whole different Leslie.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting though, like for me though, I got really bad eye fatigue doing that on my phone, but
Oh.
that's
Well,
really
no,
cool.
phone reading is the worst. I don't know how people do
Yeah,
that.
I like to always just throw my Kindle in because it doesn't have
Mhm.
the glare on the
Got the
screen.
anti-glare kind of coating on it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
But I
yeah.
mean, Leslie hit it on the head. It's really like I'm hyperactive online, but I'm also incredibly disciplined. It's how I
Mhm.
lose weight whenever I want to lose weight. It's how I stop smoking whenever I wanted to stop smoking. Like I
I didn't know you were
structure
a
my life.
smoker. Thanks
I
for
Say
didn't
what?
sharing.
either.
I
Yeah,
didn't
I
know you were
smoked
a
for 7
smoker.
years. I smoked for 7 years in my early
Oh,
20s. Yeah.
wow. I didn't know that. Neat.
Um, but I mean, it just is what it is. I came from a family of smokers, so it's what I did.
Yeah, I mean,
The reason I'm
I
wearing a
did
hat is
too.
my hair's a hot mess.
I
Um,
think I did most of my 20s, but I decided to get into triathlon and I just quit cold turkey.
Yeah,
I just did it because I was bored,
yeah.
which that's my hobby, running, and I can take an audiobook. So it's like my hobbies just kind of work together to help me do what I want to do.
That's amazing. I love to run too. I don't do it as much as I used to,
ugh.
but I can't run. For some reason, I just don't like listening to audiobooks when I run. I like listening to music. I can't run without listening to music, but
I don't
Well,
like
it
when I'm
cardio.
depends.
I do muscle work. I
It
like push-ups. I
ah,
like
yeah.
Yeah.
calisthenics. I like calisthenics. I
Mhm.
don't like
If I'm
cardio.
if I'm training where I'm doing speed work, I have to have music. But if it's like a long foundation run,
Ah, yeah.
give me a like before I got into audiobooks, I was doing podcasts. Because then I'm more, because it's like,
Me
I don't want
too.
to run for 2 hours at this pace. Well, give me something to distract myself with. And a conversation or an audiobook does that perfectly.
I've always listened to music, but I do I do my reading while walking on my treadmill. So I own a treadmill and I walk an hour every morning and I read while I'm walking. And I have a stationary bike, so sometimes I switch it up and read while I'm on my stationary bike. But yeah, that's so fascinating. So both of you are very organized. Do you both feel like you're both pretty good about sticking with your TBRs?
Mhm.
I used to be. When I first started, I was very. I actually just recorded a video yesterday about mood reading that I haven't
Mhm.
edited yet. But when I first started BookTube, it was this is what I'm reading, this is what I'm gonna do. I DNF way too much. I'm known for DNFing, and I think the problem is because I became too structured. Yeah, I've got recent DNFs. I actually DNF'd a book yesterday, got stubborn, and finished it this morning. So I undnf'd it, but like I,
Do
I
you mind
like
sharing what book that was?
Beyond Redemption.
Ah.
I just finished it 20 minutes before we went live.
Mhm.
Dark, weird, inventive, and then it was just kind of a bit boring at the same time, which is weird because a book with that much murder should not be boring. But
Who is
whatever.
that by?
Michael R. Fletcher.
You had that on your wish list, and I sent that to you for your birthday.
Did you? I
Yeah.
finished it.
Oh.
Yep. Well, now you're gonna have a physical copy of a DNF.
That's fine. I
un-DNF.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. My birthday's in 4 days, so thank you.
Happy
That's
birthday. Yay.
Thank you.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I had the audio. Great narration. It's one of the most. You're gonna get me distracted on whatever the question was, but it's one of the most inventive. It's literally a magic system based off mental illness.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard about the
Um,
book. I've heard a lot about it. It sounds fascinating because I think he actually did research on true mental illness conditions.
Oh yeah,
And I guess they're in
I-
the DSM. I haven't checked. But yeah, no, we were talking about TBRs. What about you, Leslie? Are
Instruction.
you really
I'll stick to my TBR. Now, I will add 2. If I get them all read and I have openings, I will add to them. But I'm a list person, and I have a schedule all the way through like 2025.
nah.
And if I put it on the TBR, it usually doesn't get moved around unless there's, if I have one on there and there's going to be the next book in the series is going to come out in 2 months, I might move it. But once I get started on it, it's just like, yeah, I am a list maker. I'm somebody that sticks to the rules. If you're like, these are the rules, then I'm like, okay, these are the rules. I don't infer. I don't try to find a loophole. Like, it's like, this is my TBR. This is what I'm going to read. And I don't know. I'm just wired. I am an odd duck.
No, it's interesting. There's a channel, Criminali, and
I love Criminali.
Yeah, I've been really into his channel lately, and he was talking about TBRs and how he has a spreadsheet, and he's very structured about his TBR because he would have anxiety. He has too many books on his shelf, too many books to choose from, that if he didn't have a TBR, he would just feel a sense of overwhelm of what do I read next. And I thought that was an interesting conversation point, because I think a lot of people talk about mood reading as a way to alleviate anxiety of having to fulfill a TBR. What about you,
I have
Andrew?
found that is the case, because otherwise I start feeling constrained. Like if I'm judging a competition, and I don't like the books, then I feel constrained, and I feel like that's a great way to hit a reading slump. An amazing way to just throw yourself into a reading slump. Which happened to me.
Is to have a strict TBR, or is that what you mean?
Basically, because if you're not liking anything you're reading, like toss it out. That's my
I guess how I combat that is there's always going to be thrillers, horror, some nonfiction, literary fiction, fantasy, science fiction. I read so many different genres that I don't really.
I read 3.
Get into a slump because it's not same thing, and it's just a whole wild mix. I just kind of.
I was surprised though. I think was it your last wrap up where you talked about several DNFs?
Okay, yeah. So those were all sci-fi, self-pub, part of the self-published science fiction competition. And after that video,
just mentioned?
After that video went up, there was a very interesting conversation between reviewers in that Discord, and it was revealed how these were top 3 books from 2 different teams. It was revealed how they ended up in the top 3, and if they don't change how they do this, this competition is going to fail, because one of the top 3 books that just about everybody on my team is DNF that has tried it got there because one person put it through strictly based on its writing style. And I'm like, there's more to it. What about the plot? What about the fact that this is a sci-fi competition? Those elements are important. There's characters, there's atmosphere, there's logic, there's intrigue. There's so many elements than just a writing style. This book made it through this round for other people to have to say, like I was feeling bad because I was DNFing all these books. And I'm like going, is there something wrong with me? Like, am I in a mood? And then my teammates are not finished. I'm just like looking at it and then seeing how these books made it and why. I'm like, oh, I do not feel bad at all. I am glad. So there's been talks and lots of advice, suggestion. Maybe going forward, the competition they'll see we need to make some changes, provide maybe some guidance as to, I don't know, maybe I think they should just break it down by call pile for each of the book and make that person fill in a rating for each element of that book and then get the average. I think that would be a better way for these reviewers to enter their scores rather than just saying, I give this book a 9.5 because I like the way it was written. I don't know. But yeah, like I was feeling bad about myself when I did that because I thought it was a me thing. And I was like, because I DNF'd 2 other books that weren't part of the competition too. And I'm just going, ooh, do I not like reading anymore? But then
I think that's possible.
Yeah, well, I picked up Kareem Solomon's Army of the Cursed. Freaking loved it. Mowed right on into the second one in that series, like back to back. And I haven't read 2 books in the same series back to back in years. So, yeah,
Kareem's
that
good
made
dude.
me happy.
Interesting. Yeah.
Kareem's good people.
Interesting. So both of you are I think you're pretty strongly associated with reviewing self-published books. And I know a lot of
we're siblings.
What was that?
I said, yeah, we're siblings.
We're book 2 siblings.
That's right. So, and I mean, there are many self-published authors who are in our community interacting with all of us. And so I'm curious about that. Does it affect you to do a review on a book that you know the author is going to watch?
I mean, I did one recently where, this author has written one of my favorite books of all time. And their follow-up was middle of the road for me. And I knew, I was like, I know this isn't going to be probably something they're going to enjoy seeing, but at the end of I didn't enjoy writing it, but at the end of the day, I'm putting a review out. My job is being a literary matchmaker, helping other readers find a book by talking about what worked for me, what didn't work for me. And what didn't work for me may be what checks every box for another reader. So I have to be honest about, it is 100% subjective, but I feel like I'm discussing enough elements that someone can make a reasonable decision of, yeah, this book's going to work for me. And that's what's more important. If I give it a glowing review because I like something else by this author, or I like the author as a person, that's not being fair to other readers that might pick it up and then they go, wow, this is not good. This isn't what she said it is. Now they don't trust me. Now they might not try anything else by this author. And that might also, because they're self-published, feed into that stigma that self-published books are authors that just couldn't hack it in the traditional world. And so honesty, integrity is what's most important, even if, hopefully it's like our friendship is, strong enough to handle it. It's all I can hope for. I haven't heard anything from them after that review went up, but there's nothing that can be done about it.
Yeah.
I bought the book, by the way, like with my own money. So, but
Right.
even if I didn't buy the book, I'm still, because I was supposed to actually get an ARC and it just never arrived. But I wanted to read it so bad that I bought it.
Yeah. What about you, Andrew?
So for me, if a book makes it to video, there's 2 things that either happen. 1, I loved it, or B, I hated it. I don't do a lot of negative reviews, so chances are I loved it. When it comes to written reviews, though, like I will be 100% honest in the video as well, but it's probably going to be glowing if it's on video. I probably really enjoyed that book. And the reason I recorded a video is I wanted to share my love of the book with somebody. But I will mention if an entry isn't quite as strong as the previous or the, whatever this author has done. Written reviews, though, like if you send me a book for review, or if I get a book and I am reviewing it, then whatever I write is whatever I write. Like either I liked it or I didn't like it, or I DNF'd it. And if I DNF'd it, I'm probably just not going to talk about it. And so like a lot of people are like, hey, did you do, I get a lot of, why don't you do negative reviews, or why don't you do reviews of the entire series? And I'm just like, well, okay, but so there's the whole metric of, if I do a video review for book 2 and you haven't read book 1, are you going to watch my review for book 2? Like that.
The only time I do that is if the two are like, maybe it's a series that they connect later and they didn't connect in the first 2. But it's hard to.
Yeah. So I usually only do first books in a series on video, but I will write written reviews for everything pretty much I read, unless like it's just something I'm reading for fun. Like not everything. I don't write written reviews for every single thing I read.
Oh, I do.
I don't have time.
I do, because that's the best way to help an author, encourage an author. And now I don't do a single.
If it's self-pub, I do a written review. If it's trad, sometimes I'll just let it slide and give it a star rating and move on.
Yeah. But I don't do a dedicated review for every book, but every book gets discussed, like in my weekly reading wrap-ups. Every book gets covered there. But picking which one's going to do, it's just like, do I have enough to say about it to warrant a review? And like you, I don't do negative reviews. I don't call it a negative review. I might discuss one that I didn't care for as much, but I'm going to be respectful for it. I don't do rants. I don't watch rants. I don't. That's a vibe that affects my mental health, and I like being happy. I am a sunshine. Like, I live in the Sunshine State. It is where I belong. I like being happy. I like being positive. I like sharing positivity. I like encouraging. And if I don't have to say something nice, I am not going to get up in a video and be like, do I want to sometimes? Yes. But yeah.
Chances are, if I don't like something, I'm not going to finish it. And if I don't finish something, I'm not going to review it, because I have no business reviewing a book I haven't finished.
Yeah. I don't do reviews on DNS unless it's part of a competition. That I will do, because the author's kind of hanging out there going, well, why didn't this book make it through?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had authors actually contact me and thank me. They use that for constructive criticism and made some changes or did some things. And I was like, well, that's cool.
Yeah. Interesting. So, and I also love what you said a little bit earlier, Leslie, about how you're a matchmaker in your review. I've never heard it framed that way before.
I just pulled that out of my tail one day when I was like, I've been called a matchmaker before. I don't script myself when I do videos. And sometimes I don't know what I'm going to say. It just kind of comes out. And sometimes I'll just try it a few different ways. And in editing, I pick the one I like the best. And that just came out one day. And I was like, oh, that's cute. I'm going to keep that.
That you're a book matchmaker. I like that, because I think
literary
that's
matchmaker.
Oh, literary matchmaker.
We got to have the play on books.
I think that's the most
talking out of his butt. Theo, you're fine. You don't need to script.
Oh no, yeah, you don't need a script, Theo.
You're fine, dude.
Yes.
No, so I couldn't tell you weren't script, Theo. Yours are always so pro sounding. They just flow like a conversation. I'm jealous.
Yeah. So it seems like a lot of people are with you all about, they're not really into the rant review type of vibe.
You kind of cultivate an audience depending on what kind of content you make. If you make a lot of rant reviews, don't be surprised when your comment section is full of a bunch of negativity. But negativity does attract a lot of subscribers. Love negativity.
Yes.
So it can be a trap, because it's a great way to grow a channel. But then you've also created a kind of a toxic audience.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that kind of growth.
What is it? Well, let's see what Alan says. He says, I had a negative review earlier, but I tried to be really specific on why it didn't work for me, but would probably work for someone else. And see, I think this is something actually I was going to say with the matchmaker point, is that even if you're talking about something that doesn't work for you, I think it's the best compliment if you put out a review that's maybe lukewarm or negative when somebody says, "Oh, wow, what you said, I think I would love that book based on what
I've
you
bought
said."
so many books by, I call those more discussions rather than negative reviews. But when you're able to say, well, I didn't like it because of X, but
Mhm.
here is what the book is about, here are the elements, and discuss it. I've gotten so many books that I purchased and loved, 5-star reads for me, because they just discussed it, and all of the things they didn't like, I love. Like, oh, if it
Yeah.
has a serial killer in it, I'm guaranteed probably that's at least 4 stars right out the gate before I even read it.
Well, like,
Yes.
so there's a specific author who I DNF'd their book, but like I literally started messaging them, and Leslie will probably know who this is. It's John. And I said, hey, this book isn't for me, but I know reviewers who are going to love this book. I said, reach
One of
out
the
to this person, this person, this person. And
I
sure
w-
enough, he reaches out, and Leslie loves it.
one of the best books I read last year. I have had a placeholder on my TBR every month this year until I get that second arc for the book, the second book in the series.
Oh, yeah. No, I
So
think that
there,
that has
Loved
incredible value. I used to be somebody like when I was a viewer on BookTube before I had a channel.
I
I've already
remember
told.
those days.
Yeah. I've told this story before on Why Read, but just to repeat it here, I used to avoid those end of the year most disappointing books videos. I just didn't care. I was like, why? I follow your channel because I want to find out fun stuff to read. Why would I care about books you don't like? Like, I don't know. Like, the concept was so weird to me. But then, like, about a year and a half ago, I decided to reframe the way I thought about those particular videos because I found as I started a channel that it was pretty easy for me to be able to articulate what it was in a book that I loved. And for me personally, and everybody's going to vary about this, I found it a little bit more difficult to articulate specifically what in a book didn't work for me. Like, there are even still a couple of books I can think of where I'm still struggling to figure out what it was about the book that didn't work for me.
Oh
Like, I can't put
man,
my finger on it.
I know.
And so I started watching those videos, and some of them, yeah, some of them are like, "Oh, I just didn't like it," you know?
Well,
there's
But some
value
of
in
them,
saying I didn't
there
like
were
this
some
because
people,
XYZ.
but some of them really are very specific. Like, some of them, they said specifically why certain things didn't work for them and how it might work for you. And I got so much value out of that. And so that's been like my mission over the last couple of years is if something isn't working for me, to be able to like really hone in on what specific details are not working for me. And it's a skill. I think it's a skill that one develops over time. At least for me, it was. Some people are really good at just identifying things, but yeah.
One of my favorite videos, to Alan's point, one of my favorite videos I've ever done is my best surf cold critique. Whether you agree with it or not, I had a lot of fun recording that video because I felt like it's a book you're either going to love or hate, but there was a lot to talk about the book, and so there was a lot of value in diving in and being critical on such a prolific author. And I know Leslie loves the book. That's why she's chuckling to herself.
Leslie
But
and I had a very similar experience with the book, I think, where we
Mhm.
both really enjoyed it, but we did feel like one particular part of the
Repetitive.
book was
Yeah.
repetitive. Yeah.
yeah, so like it's there is value in a critical critique review. If you're able to do that, then I mean that is a book that has or a review that has value rather than just bashing something or ranting it or throwing a 1 star on something and just be like, oh guys, it's terrible, don't ever read this. Like it's just, well, no, explain why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you should be able to leave less than if you leave 1 or 2 stars. I have been in talks with GOODREADS for years, and I keep revisiting it. I'm like, maybe I'll wear them out, but I'm like, just they have to provide 2 sentences of why they ranked it so low. Just it's because that would cut out all the I'm sorry, but it's just a lot of people use it discriminatorily the books aren't out, the arcs aren't out, and you're over here one-starring it. And I actually reached out to some of these people. I found them on Twitter, and I'm like, why did you give this a 1 star? Like, I've talked to the author. The arcs, these are traditionally published. I'm like, the arcs haven't even been sent out yet. Oh, I just have no interest in reading it. Then scroll by. Just do this. And you're not hurting anybody at all. But when you're one-starring something like that, the book's not out, the arc's not out, you are hurting people. You're hurting the author. You're hurting what the app, in my opinion, is meant for. And if you have any kind of following, well, your crowd is going to be like, oh, well, so-and-so doesn't like this book. I'm not going to read it either. I'm like, like,
and then there's the
I
broken
really think I could get
where you can rate the
with
shipment instead of the book.
I really love what Alan says here too about like expectations, because I think that expectations usually when I see people who leave those kind of reviews, it mostly has to do with the fact that the book was not what they expected, or they had a very specific concept of, or a narrow, like they could have a very narrow idea of what fantasy is, for example, and then read a fantasy book that was trying to go for something different or have a different flavor of fantasy. And it's like, they don't get it.
That happens with Dresden all the time. People are like, oh my gosh, he has the male gaze. Like, it's noir. That's part of it, which he did give in to people complaining, and he like did scale back on it. But it's like, it's not that you don't like the Dresden Files or Jim Butcher. You don't like, that's just an element that is part of noir. Like,
yeah.
But if they make it past like to get to like book 4 or 5, they all like tunes start changing, because that's when that series gets figured out. But it expectations a lot. That's why I see a review or I read the back of a book and I'm like, ooh, I want to read that. If it sits long enough, I forget it. And like when it goes on my TBR, like the books I'm going to read for April, if I'm like, oh, I planned this for April, I don't remember what it is, I'm not going to read the back of the book, because sometimes that has a spoiler, and those book blurbs can do things to my expectations, which can affect my reading experience. So I stay away from those suckers.
Yeah,
I need to work on reading expectation, because sometimes like the expectation of a book just doesn't live up to what's on the page.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the author too, because we're like, hey, this is what this is about. I wanted to talk about this religion and this aspect. And I'm like, ooh, I love reading about religion. I love learning about other religions. I can't wait to read it. And then it's like 3 sentences about the religion, and then the book is about a completely other thing. And I'm like,
or it could be like the marketing. Maybe the publishers are marketing a certain way. That's something I noticed. I was watching a video on Elliot Brooks's channel the other day, and she was talking about like how she said the way that this is marketed is this, but this is actually what you get. And I thought that was really smart on her part to actually consider the way a book is being marketed and what readers might expect versus what the book actually is. I don't feel like a lot of reviewers I see do that. I think that's a really helpful service.
Well, and so I'm not sure if I fully understand, but something that like recently Nico read that like new companion novel to The Wheel of Time that got written by Michael Livingston. It was supposed to be like a history of the making of The Wheel of Time. Things like 200 pages. It was not marketed as what it was. It was just more of the same. It was not an insight. It was all false marketing. It was a money grab. And like they did all sorts of marketing against this thing. They did special editions. And really, it's nothing that needed to be sold as an additional packaging. It was everything that was available on a wiki.
Yeah. I mean, like, and some of that, you know, it makes me wonder about the publishing world and what they're going through and the things that they have to do to try to sell books these days. I mean, we've seen it for years already with the whole Game of Thrones thing. But this is just like, if you like Game of Thrones, you'll like this book.
Oh, Lord.
Not
Like,
everything is
that
like Game of
almost
Thrones.
turns me off of a book. I'm so
yeah.
tired of everything being compared to George R.R. Martin. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
But hey,
Or
it
throw the George quote on the book. It has worked on me before. I will not
got to see the way it was meant to be written.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, well, Yeah, this is an interesting point too. So this is also why I don't really put a lot of faith into Goodreads, and I don't rate books, by the way. But I don't really put a lot of faith into the averages of Goodreads ratings because a lot of people will rate books before they're even out.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the name behind it. I mean, there are so many factors that go into that. So that just
Well,
make it
like
a
some
little
of my
hard.
favorite reads in the last couple months, Janny Words have like 3.9 ratings on Goodreads, and typically, like if it's not a 4 or above, I usually am kind of cautious. And Stormwarden blew me out of the water by Janny Words. Like it was
Mhm.
so inventive, so great. There were so many great things that are like currently being popular in today's what's the word I'm looking for? In the books that are being popular today. I can't think of the word. But it's just Goodreads is not a good metric for if a book is good or not. Now, if it's like a
Yeah.
1 star and it's got like a really weird title, like Kissing the Coronavirus, maybe stay away from it.
So I never look at ratings before I pick one up. I go strictly off of, and I'm really bad about. I'll just kind of glance at the back of a book, and like certain buzzwords or phrases is what pops out at me, and I'm like, ooh, that's gonna be right up my alley. I'm usually
Hmm.
pretty good at picking stuff out for myself. I mean, I've been
Do you
doing it
all
for almost 50 years.
Yeah, so since you two do a lot of reviews, do you two watch reviews or read reviews of books that you're going to read? I mean, does that inform your decision to pick up a book at all?
Mm-mm,
Not really, no.
mm-mm.
Now,
What?
if somebody I trust likes the book, then all I have to see is a video title of saying I read this book and I liked it, and that's enough for me. That I don't even have to click the video. If it's like Philip Chase or if it's something that like is super niche that Alan's really into in the moment, I can be like, okay, maybe that's something I should probably check out. Alan likes I like a lot of the weird stuff that, isn't popular, kind of like Alan. Now I don't like it the same way Alan likes it, but usually I'm like a star lower than Alan is on it, but it's still an enjoyable read. Or if, Nico's reading something or I see on Twitter where Jordan Reads Books has like reviewed something, or I get a recommendation of, have you read it? No, read it. Okay, it's good enough for me.
Interesting. What about you, Leslie?
So it's hard. I mean, I feel like books get just thrown at me, and I mean, I mean, it's gosh, I have certain. I just kind of I don't go looking for books, but I have a certain amount of time each day that I'll spend on social media. I'll thumb through Instagram, I'll thumb through Twitter, and look at YouTube. And there are certain people who I know if they love it, I'm going to love it. I don't even need to know anything about it. Like Esme, if she's like, I love this book, I know I'm going to love it. And it's just, I don't know. My TBR just, it's like they're the books are rabbits and they just multiply. And I don't know how it happens, but I have a mountain of books. But I don't actively search out books. I just kind of like, oh, that's a cool cover. I can't tell you how many times I picked up a book because I saw the cover and was like, ooh, shiny.
Well, I think that,
A good
I
cover is a
honestly think
great
that
attention
cover
to
art is important because cover art really does
Very.
set the tone and it gives you an expectation of the tone of the book, of the genre of the book, of so many things, even if it's happening on a subconscious level. Like if you look at a cover that's of a YA novel, usually you could see certain common threads that will tell you it's a YA book versus something that's an adult fantasy or epic fantasy versus Dresden Files, or, I think that so many things in the cover art can give you indications for expectation.
I mean, if I
Yep.
see a Felix Ortiz cover, you at least have my kernel of like my interest. Like, okay, I'm paying attention.
Yeah. So I have a question for you two. Since you two said that you don't typically watch reviews before you read books.
Well, I guess I do, but by the time I read it, it's usually months to sometimes a year later, because all the channels I watch do reviews, but it's so long between that I've usually forgotten, except for maybe their
Yeah.
emotional response to it. So I guess
Yeah.
I do, but then I promptly forget.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I think that could be understandable not to watch reviews if you're going to read a book too, that maybe um you don't want it to affect your expectations somehow, or you want to go in more blind. I don't know if that's why. Any particular?
Um, well, it depends on the reviewer. Some people can review a book in a way that they can give me enough information to let me know this would be a book for me without getting into heavy spoilers. Now, some
Mhm.
spoilers I don't mind, but if you tell me that who the killer is, and then I've shied away from, there's certain people that I've watched a review that they've just kind of they've done that too much where they kind of without warning get into a spoiler. And so I don't watch their reviews anymore. I'm like, okay, what else are you putting out that I can watch? Because I'm gonna stay away from your reviews because you
I
give
see.
away too much.
Yeah, that's understandable. I think that's completely understandable
I do
to
my best not to talk about anything past maybe 20% of the start of the book. Like if it's past
so
20%, it's off limits.
so I guess that's what I'm curious about, because I think like if you're somebody who doesn't watch reviews, but you
Mm-hmm.
do reviews, who are the intended people you want to watch your reviews?
People looking for their next read.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty safe go-to answer.
So you're looking for people who watch reviews before they read the book, even though you two don't watch reviews before you read the book.
So
I
Leslie,
do, but I don't go back and rewatch it. Like that's how the book ended up on my TBRs. Probably one of my friends, one of you all. Like I can't remember something about Hell's Chasm by Janie Wirtz ended up on my
Yeah.
TBR as my first read for her because I saw your
Mhm.
review.
Mhm.
But can I tell you right now? I watched that. Gosh, you did that what 2 or 3 months ago? Maybe?
Oh, no, it was last year.
Was it
It was,
last year?
yeah, it was
But
like my favorite book of the midpoint of the
yeah,
year. Mhm.
but I remember you talked about it and you're like, this is why I think this is a good starting point for her. And I know a lot of people
Mhm.
have enjoyed reading her. And I was like, okay, Joanna's read this. She thinks this is a good entry point. I want to read Janie Wirtz, put it on my TBR and scheduled it. But I couldn't tell you, it's been long enough now. I couldn't tell you what all you said about it, except that it was a good, like, that's the one thing that stood out to me.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not going to go back and refresh my memory when I'm getting ready to sit down and read the book.
Yeah.
So,
when I was getting started, Leslie taught me what evergreen content was. And so really the reason I put out a book review is I want to share my excitement of a book that I've recently read, and I want to recommend a book to people who to watch it, and then I just kind of leave it on my channel for people to just find, for people to, say the book all of a sudden starts trending, or if I've talked about it enough in other forms of content, they'll come back and watch it to see what it's about. That's really why I do my book reviews, is it's just kind of there as, I usually continuously talk about books in one form or another in like book hauls, recommendations, live shows. And then people can then go back to my channel and possibly reference that book. And
Right.
then if it sounds interesting to them, they then may pick it up and find something that they enjoy.
Yeah. When I do a review, I think my intention is that I'm doing this for somebody who has not read the book, to give them ideas for the expectations to have going into the book, as well as other kind of insights about the book that I thought were really interesting. But but overall, I think it's interesting though that so many people who read books, like Christopher here, saying that they don't watch reviews, even non-spoiler reviews, until they finish the book. So I'm wondering the purpose of the review that reviewers are doing this for, if it really needs to be non-spoiler, if nobody's watching the review until after they finish the book anyway.
because I've actually polled my subscribers about this very thing, and the people who watch it and learn about it and say, "Oh, well, I would have never heard about this if you hadn't mentioned it. This does sound like a book I want to read." Those people outweighed people that don't watch any kind of review until after they've read the book.
Interesting. Okay, got it.
And if you do go non-spoiler or spoiler, there's always going to be somebody who's like, you didn't cover this, or I wish you hadn't covered this.
Oh, I've
You're
never
not
had
going
that
to please
happen.
everybody.
Mhm.
Like something that could be on the first page, I'll mention it, and then I'll get yelled at for spoiling the book. So there's
Interesting.
no pleasing everybody.
Yeah.
So whether you've read it or not, like if you've read it and you want to see if I enjoyed it to see if our tastes mesh, that's one thing. But if you're just looking, if our tastes already mesh and it's a book that I'm talking about that I enjoyed that you've never heard of, then that may also have value.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. Something I like to do sometimes is if I am a little bit and I will admit this, I'm kind of along the same lines of you all. I think I am a little more liberal about watching reviews, non-spoiler reviews before I read a book to get ideas about it. But if I know I'm definitely going to read a book, then I'm a little more hesitant to watch reviews beforehand because I don't
Is
want, especially if people have critical things to say, I don't want to go in with the critical lens, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah,
So
I would say, like, if I know I've got a book on my schedule for April and somebody else reviews it, I just bookmark it and come back to it after I read it. But if, like, like
yeah.
if you put up a review tomorrow for another Janie Wertz book I've never heard of, I'll watch it because I'm like, okay, well, is this maybe book 2 that I need to read by this author?
Cycle of Fire.
Because I know it'll be next year before I get to it.
Yeah, yeah. And I did watch your Cycle of Fire review, Andrew, by the way. So yeah, I think that, and the other though, but one other purpose I found that is really helpful with reviews is that, let's say I am reading the book and I get to the halfway point and I am not connecting to the book. I'm having some struggles and I'm trying to figure out, okay, I think people really enjoyed this book, but I'm really struggling with it. Sometimes I do this. Sometimes I will go and I'll find some non-spoiler reviews of the book so I could hear what it was about the book in a general way that made people connect to the book. And sometimes that can help motivate me to get back into the book with a different mindset. So I think that that can also be a value with non-spoiler reviews as well.
That's interesting. It's
Mhm.
funny. I have a book exactly like that, and immediately springs forth because I DNF'd it 3 times before I finished it. And it was an SPFBO winner. So, like, obviously, people enjoyed the book, and it's Orconomics by Zachary Pike.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't understand why people liked it, and
I
that's
remember
because
that.
it's because of the structure of the book. It's meant to flip on its head at the 50% point. I had no idea.
Ah,
No clue. And so I'd read the 30%. I'd be like, this is terrible. And then, like, it's because I didn't get to the twist. Nobody tells you about the twist.
They're not supposed to.
that's the whole. How would it be a twist if you knew it was
but
coming? Though?
I get on to Andrew all the time for being what I call an impatient reader.
I am.
He
I'm
wants
so
to know
impatient.
everything up front. I'm like, there's like a beginning and an end. If you end at the beginning, then there's no point in having this whole book.
But I want to be gripped. I want to at least be invested. I want to be having fun.
Yeah.
If I'm not having fun, and like, you can keep things from me throughout the story, just keep me entertained while you do it. If you fail to keep me entertained, I get very impatient. Especially if it's like a darling. Like if it's something that's been lauded a whole lot, I'm like, why? Why is this lauded? This is not entertaining. I'm not having fun. Oh, just wait till you get to 70%. What do you mean 70%? This book is 800 pages long.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a video coming up soon where I've kind of got a bit of a project that I'm doing, but reviews that I really like to watch are genres that I don't read in. I'm subscribed to a lot of channels that read stuff that I do not reach for on purpose. YA, romance, cozy mysteries, things of that nature. That's not something I generally just pick up. So I watch these channels because, one, the people that I do watch have great personalities. Like, they're entertaining even if I don't care about the book they're talking about. But I've like watched and I found a few books that they have sold me on and their genre of choice, and I'm going to read them and be like, okay, let's see how this goes.
Oh, that's smart. I love that concept, Leslie. I can't wait to watch that video. I like to watch other booktubers as well outside of Fantasy Booktube every now and then because I just feel like it's inspiring to me and I love the review process. So I love to see different ways of going about reviewing. Are there any aspects of review that you feel are important to attend to or that you like to when you watch a review? I guess you all don't watch reviews that much until you after you finish the book, maybe. But are there any aspects of a review that excite you or that make you want to pick up a book?
I like, so if I do, like, I don't say I never watch reviews, but if I do like a review, it's usually because the reviewer has done their job to let me know how the book made them feel. Like, were they entertained? Did they have a good time? Was there a good twist? Was there good characterization, good structure? Which is something I've started implementing into my reviews of, like, instead of just doing it was 5 stars, I'll be like, well, it's kind of got this level of darkness rating. I really enjoyed the characterization. Here's why. It's really fast paced or it's really slow paced. It's dense. It's, easy to read. I like to know those kind of generic details about a book to let me know what reading experience I can expect.
Interesting. Yeah.
For me, being a character-driven reader,
Hmm.
although I have read some really great books that I love, that the plot was just stellar. Characters definitely took a back seat. I'm a character-driven reader. I want to hear a little bit about the characters. Are they one, is there one, if I just have one that I either can relate to or I love or love to hate, then I know I'm pretty much going to be golden.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Characters are so key for me as well. I also love hearing about themes. If somebody talks about themes, especially presenting it as a question, that also gets to me. I know Alan does that a lot in his reviews, and I've noticed Patrick does that as well sometimes. So that always gets me intrigued. If there's a kind of question that is going to get me to critically examine something, I always am excited about that.
Atmosphere
I
is
am not a
another.
themes reader.
Hmm?
I
I'm
am
sorry.
not a themes reader.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, not really.
I think you
Um,
are.
there are some things that I really like, but like using to do like Prince of Nothing. Like if we talk about thematic Prince of Nothing and philosophy, if you go deep in, I'm a fish out of water and I just see darkness on the page and I lose all interest.
Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, The Prince of Nothing, it does go very deep into themes, but it also has incredible character work, like some of the most well-realized characters I've ever read in fantasy. So
Well, let me
it's
just
amazing.
make a little note over here.
It is pretty
See?
nihilistic, but it
How
is
it
good.
goes.
I
Yeah.
have been told that is a series I will not enjoy.
No, you would hate it, Andrew. I do not recommend it to you. I do not recommend it to Andrew at all. No, no questions asked. Yeah, I have a good sense of what you like, and I would not recommend that one.
I appreciate it.
It is neat though to hear tailored recommendations though too. I think that can always be fun. So I love the matchmaker thing again, Leslie. That's going to stick with me after this episode. Um, yeah, it's so interesting though about the spoiler thing. I think it's interesting to discuss what spoiler means to different people. Yeah, I have been accused of that too. I think in my Babel review by R.F. Kuang, which was a book I was very lukewarm about, and then after I got away from it, I liked it less and less,
Oh
unfortunately.
yeah, I took that one off my TBR.
Ugh,
I was
I
like,
felt
yeah,
sad
this
about
I was
that.
never going to read it.
Yeah.
That's because I really have nothing nice to say about Poppy War.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
you would.
love Poppy War.
Oh,
Yeah.
I do not.
I didn't like The Burning God, but I really enjoyed books 1 and 2.
Yeah, I
I
love
am
books 1 and
glad people
2,
enjoy
and
it.
then Alan was like, he was reading The Burning God, he was just like, "What? Just what's happening?" I'm like, "Yep, that's the low on priority," and still haven't read it.
Yeah. But it was interesting because what I said something in the Babel review, and only one person who commented said this. They're like, "Wow, you spoiled the book," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness."
They might have
I
just
don't really
been
think I said
trolling.
anything that's not on that cover, but
It's
it's
funny.
interesting how people perceive different
Yeah.
things as being spoilery.
Spoilers are as subjective to an individual as star rating, and you cannot please them all. You can do your best, but I mean, I had one tell me one time that just knowing what person, like first person, second person, what style it's written in, they consider it a spoiler. And I'm just like going,
What?
how do you pick a book to read? Because clearly you don't watch a review, you don't read a review, you don't read the back of the book. Is the title a spoiler? Like,
That's
so,
hilarious. Because I know I got into it. I once commented, I think it was on Michael Nipp's video. He did a video a long while back about how impossible it was to do an objective review. And I was thinking about it, and I commented, I'm like, well, you could say the number of pages. You could say if it's in first person or third person narration. I started picking out all these things in my head. I'm like, you could say if it has short chapters or long chapters. You could say if it has this many characters. You could actually talk about certain tropes, I think, with it being without giving away any subjective or personal experience. I think there are ways to do it. Now, would it be interesting to people? Probably not as much, because we love to hear our emotions, right?
Right.
We're here to hear about the emotional connection we have with the book.
That's what sells me on a book. Just watching, I can watch a reviewer and see their passion about how they talk about it. They could be listing out objective elements, but the passion and the joy that comes through when they're talking about a book that they love, like that's not faked, that's not scripted. When you can just read it on their face and their body language, it's like, okay, that's one I need to try.
Yeah, it's interesting because I just finished Shogun by James Clavell the other day. And
really disappointing ending, but
I felt the opposite. I loved the ending.
I did not like the way it wrapped up. Like the last 10 pages, I thought was just disappointing.
Total opposite experience. I was like, the ending was perfect for me, and I had such a hard time getting into that book. Like
this is what's so much fun about reading books is the different experiences you each have and how stuff hits you.
But I can understand why we can't talk about it, obviously.
Without being
I can understand why people would not like that ending.
Throughout the last half of the book, there was an expectation of an event.
Right. Exactly. And I didn't care about that event.
Philosophizing at the end. That's it.
And that's what I cared about. Yeah, exactly. This is like the two different types of readers here.
It's not a horrendous ending. It's just my expectation after spending 1,100 pages reading a book was not met.
You're right. I totally agree with you, Andrew. I totally understand. And for me, that was why I struggled getting through Shogun, because the 1,100 pages was about this plot I just did not care about. But I love the philosophy stuff.
I cared about that plot, except for chapter 40. Chapter 40 got weird. But like, I don't know. In terms of spoilers, this isn't my belief, but recently, I believe, I'm not making this up. Feel free to fact check me. They did a study or an article about why spoilers aren't really a thing.
I did look up that article, and it was on short stories. So I don't know how reliable we can. Okay, so what they did was they got a bunch of people with a bunch of short stories, and they found that the people who read the short stories and knew what the ending was ended up significantly enjoying the story more than those who didn't know what the ending was.
So the way I look at it is, if you've already decided to read a book, could it matter if certain reveals and plot points are spoiled for you? Absolutely. But at the same time, if you've already decided to read the book, you've already committed hours and hundreds of pages of your time, you're going to read it anyway.
It depends on what you.
But again, spoilers. I don't spoil people because it's a personal thing. Like, I don't. The more I read, the less I care about spoilers.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
It's
although
journey before destination.
Really had been spoiled for me, I might have punched whoever did it. So
see, there you go.
It's a very personal thing. It depends on the book. It depends on how invested I am in a series. Like if it's a single book, I'm less invested than if I've spent 6 books going on an adventure to have the outcome ruined for me. So I guess it's all a subjective thing.
Well, see, that's why I think that study doesn't really answer the question for us about whether spoilers affect our experience because they were short stories. That's so
Right.
different.
Yeah.
That's so different than reading an 1100-page tome.
Yeah. Mine's
But
more
like,
about the
even in the
journey.
comments, we've got people who say if something's spoiled, they'll skip it. Jimmy, we've got, spoils don't bother me from Mike. So
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I'm like way behind in the chat because I was stuck on this comment because I thought it was really interesting. Sorry, you were going to say about Journey?
Yeah, it's more about because I'm a character-driven reader, I'm more interested in the growth and development of what the events of the story has on the character, how they what path that sets them on, what changes that might make to them. So as long as if it's somebody who's going to be coming, facing danger, possible life where their life is in danger, and if you tell me, well, at the end, so and so does this, well, then if I get to a sticky situation, I'm going to know that I'm going to know they lived through it. So that, but it's not that big of a deal. I mean, I reread books over and over and over, and I know everything that's going to happen, and I still reread. I mean, I'm in the middle of rereading Dresden yet again. I just read these books like 2 years ago, and here I am reading them again. So
Yeah.
to answer Rogue Six, yeah, actually, but when that movie came out, The Sixth Sense, I was too young to watch it. So by the time I did watch Sixth Sense, I did know the twist in the ending.
Wow. I did not know the twist in the ending when I watched The Sixth Sense. That's crazy,
I didn't either.
Yeah,
but that's funny
wild.
because that was a quote I see dead people was in the Dresden book I'm listening to right
Oh,
now.
no way. How funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm currently rereading A Song of Ice and Fire. And it's interesting because for me, like knowing what's happening, and I know a lot of people have watched the show, even if you're a first time reader, I still feel like the experience is different. It is a different experience on a reread, knowing what's going to happen. And it doesn't make it worse. It just makes it different. But
I think it makes it better.
Interesting. Yeah, I wish I could see it. I'm trying to figure this out if it's
what
better.
I do is like I know how the character ends up, so I enjoy that arc and I enjoy the breadcrumbs, maybe the hints or clues of how that character is going to end up that the author just kind of I thought it was a throwaway line, but it actually meant something. Like I enjoy going through and picking up the breadcrumbs.
My last reread of Wheel of Time, I discovered that like the end is in the first book.
That's so cool. Yeah.
You just gotta know where to look for it.
Yeah. It's amazing to see that.
And see, now that to me would be a spoiler. If you told that to a first time reader,
you gotta know where it is though.
Doesn't matter. I could be like, okay, well, if they're about to start reading that series, they're gonna be like, okay, well, this is probably the ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shut up,
really
Alan. I didn't like Battleground.
Is Alan? Oh, Alan's yelling at us.
Alan's acting up as usual.
I didn't like Battleground.
Alan is welcome. Alan, we're only on for like 7 more minutes, but Alan, if you want to come in and join us, you're welcome to. You have access to the link. I've always told Alan he's welcome to do that, but just because I know it gives him a lot of excitement to do that. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see the reread experience, this whole question of whether the reread experience is superior to the first time reading experience is one I am so curious about for myself now.
It's depending upon the book because there are certain books or series I would almost give my dog away as a sacrifice to be able to read them again for the first time. But then
your dog? Wow.
Yeah, he's not up here right now, so
that's funny.
But then others I think are better on a reread.
Yeah,
certain books are better on reread.
Well, I mean, I know that Philip has talked about the Malazan reread experience being the most sublime literary experience of his life, and I can see that, especially as I have finished the book. When you're a first-time reader of that series, it is hard not to feel like I should be understanding more than I'm understanding. But then when you get to the end, you're like, oh,
see,
okay.
That is a prime example where I saw reviews of that book before I read it, and I knew, hey, this is a marathon. You're going to get dropped right in the middle of the race. Just have faith in the author. And like it was crazy. Stuff was going. I mean, but there were some really great characters. And when it got to the end, like, I mean, I had to have my eyebrows surgically removed out of my hairline because of how freaking good it was. And it could have that could have been a standalone. I loved that it wrapped up like a complete story. I thought it was a fantastic read. And I cannot wait to reread that.
So
Did you read
you've read
Malasan?
the first book, right? Gardens of the Moon.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I hope you.
I'm on book 4
Yeah.
in 4 days.
Hmm.
But
How are you
I
liking
don't
it?
have time to reread Malazan, or I don't want to.
Oh, are you not enjoying it, Andrew?
Well, no. So this is probably gonna make some people mad. There
Oh,
is a
dear.
I
certain
don't
amount
think
of
so.
hubris involved in asking somebody, in order to perfectly understand my series, you have to read it twice. That's a
No, I
lot
don't
of
think that.
pages.
Nah.
I don't think it's like that. I don't think that's what he means.
I'm not saying that that's the intent. I'm just saying that in order to get the story, if you have to read it 2-3 times,
See,
that's
that's
thousands and thousands and
I don't think
thousands,
so.
exactly why
millions of
I
words.
reread.
Yeah.
I
I
never
don't
get
have
the
time for that.
full. I don't ever get the full scope in the first reading. Like that's just I don't. So in the reread, because I know the ending, like I said, I am looking and because I'll get focused on like one storyline and like that's my favorite, and I'll just kind of get through the rest. Then when I go back, I'm like, okay, oh, well, this character has some interesting stuff going on. Why didn't I take note of that? Or I've experienced something in my life that changed me and put me in their shoes. And I'm like, oh, sister, I fully understand why you did this now. And I enjoy it more. So I mean, I could 100% say not a single series or book I read for the first time, I never got everything. I never got all the value out of it on my first reread. I mean, shoot, I think I'm on my 4th or 5th of Dresden, and I'm sitting over here picking up clues of like stuff that got revealed in Peace Talks and Battleground. I'm just going, oh my gosh, this is so
I
cool.
hated those books so much, Leslie. I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
I love Peace Talks, but Battleground.
I wish it wouldn't have been split. Just give me a big, thick, chunky Dresden book. Remove the filler to make them standalones,
Yes,
and I'd have been happy.
Yeah, I still probably I don't know if I happen to meet Jim Butcher in person. I still don't know if I would ask for a hug or if I would throat punch him over Battlegrounds. Don't know. We'll see what he does in the next one.
To clarify, I am planning on finishing Malazan, and if I have a rewarding experience, then I can walk away from it perfectly happy. But I am constantly told by people who have read it that, oh, you just get so much more and more and more the more you reread it. It's like, listen, I've got 400 other books that I need to read right now. Like, I can't even fathom that by the time I can get back to Malazan, I will remember anything about the series.
Shut up, Alan.
Well,
and I agree with Evie, what she just said about Assassin's Apprentice. The first time I read that book, I was so mad at Robin Hobb over this thing, and Evie knows what it is. But when I reread it, I focused on the character of Fitz. It was a completely different experience for me. But I was so mad at her over a plot device that she used, an element that she used. I was so mad that anger just kind of blotted out the beauty of the character development of this other character.
You're gonna have to tell me later what that is because I'm curious now.
Well,
The
if you
first
want
9 books
to,
are
if you
perfect.
want to get nosy about it, I'll tell you.
I am very nosy, but we are.
She already gave you the answer.
We are pretty. Oh, okay, got it. Yes, okay. Pick that up. So we are just about at time now, and I thought maybe a good way to end this would to be maybe you two can mention, since we're talking about rereading, what has been your favorite book to reread?
Oh, that's The Eye of the World. 100%.
Eye of the World. Okay.
See, I'm in the middle of a Wheel of Time reread and a Dresden reread. What else have I reread lately?
I have read Dresden 4 times.
I think I'm on the 4th or 5th of Dresden. I have no idea how many times I've read Wheel of Time or Sword of Truth or favorite reread.
Drew Hayes is a delight to reread, but those are really comforting reads. That's Fred the Vampire Accountant, Superpowers, Forging Hephaestus. I love all those.
Maybe. I mean, I really had a great time with My Heart is a Chainsaw. I read that one 2.5 times when it came out last year.
What?
I read
2.5 times?
I read the ARC. I got approved for the ARC, read and reviewed it. Then when I got the physical book, I reread it. And then I picked it up and started reading it again.
What?
I'm getting ready to reread the Blade so I can remember what happened in the book to prepare for Shadow Casket.
Yeah, I'm not kidding.
I don't reread a whole lot anymore because I've got so much to read. Like I just recently abandoned a Wheel of Time reread 10 books in because I had other stuff I had to get to.
Nah, I just schedule them in and my books aren't going anywhere. The Wheel of Time reread has just saved my life this year. It's been my comfort read when I was going through all of those DNFs, books that weren't working for me. I was in the middle of The Great Hunt.
I was critical on the series this time, but that's because I did it on audio. And I think the audio experience just made me criticize some characters more.
See, I immersion read, so I had a healthy mix. So audio, I actually have enjoyed, but yeah, I don't care. I'm gonna reread my loves as many times as I want to. My other books wait.
You know what? City Watch. I think that one is going to be absolutely amazing to reread when I get around to it because that is one
I agree, actually. I was actually thinking about that. I mean, I've only read the first 2 books, so I need to continue with the City Watch, but I've been thinking, I think I'm going to really enjoy rereading those books. I might even enjoy rereading them more than I enjoyed reading. I don't know. We'll see.
You're right,
I
Evie.
think that knowing Samuel Vimes' arc will be 10 times more rewarding the second time through. They're easy reads, they're fun, and they have a lot of commentary and theme if we want to.
They do. They do have a lot of theme. Yeah.
So,
all right.
Evie pointed out Zora Neale Hurston. I read Their Eyes Were Watching God twice in 1 year.
Yes.
And I can't wait to reread
thanks to you, by the way. Thanks to you and Evie. That one is on my TBR this year.
It's so good. It's so good. And if you love that one, go with Moses, Man of the Mountain next. I'm working through her nonfiction works now.
Yeah, I do need to read that for sure. All right. So thank you both so much for joining me for Why Read. And thank you to our wonderful friends in the chat for contributing your thoughts on rereading and spoilers and all of these topics we've been talking about. And I guess that's it. Any last final words you two want to share?
No, this is delightful.
I wanted to say shout out to GOODREADS Books. Evie introduced me to your channel last night, so I am so happy to meet a fellow Southerner here on the platform. I subscribe to you. I was the one that was talking about Dresden all over the place, so
I will be subscribing right after this live show.
Yeah, I'll have to go check out your channel. That's awesome.
So welcome to BookTube.
Welcome to BookTube. All right. Well, thank you both so much. I wish we had a little more time because there's so much more I would have wanted to ask you two, but this was so much fun. We'll have to do it again sometime. And thank you everybody again for joining us and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.